here we are. This is Sex, Love Psychedelics, and I'm your host, Dr. Kat, bringing you psychosexual conversations that will leave you intellectually turned on and hungry for more. You also brought up you've brought up a couple of times ancestral, indigenous ritual or indigenous influence, and tying that back to the roots. And if we were to dive into that a little bit more, perhaps highlight some of the historical practices and wisdom that perhaps some of the indigenous or some of the Meso American civilizations used or passed down in regards to using entheogens for fertility or for motherhood, or what that looked like?
Sure. So there's a couple of different medicines that I am aware of are part of the birthing continuum
Mm.
from the global south. And I think it's also, I just really want to reiterate that these medicines exist within cultural like constructions, right? And like are not just like the only thing that people do, but it's like
Yeah.
part of life ways, and part of relating to the land, relating to the community that you're a part of, relating to yourself as a changing woman. They come in different phases of a person's life. They come with different sets of responsibilities that are bestowed on you. And so it's just really beautiful that some of us are like a few generations out, and some of us are like many, many generations out. And so I just want to acknowledge like all of my European sisters and relatives that like are many, many, many generations out from their own indigenous ways of being. Because there is a way that also belongs to you all, and there's a way that was also taken from you as well. And so I just want to acknowledge like the ancestors of each and every one of us, and that these ways of life belong to everyone. And I have access to and only know very little in compared to what others know and have access to. In these and in the indigenous ways, some indigenous ways, particularly like the Mexica traditions. I know some and have learned some from other wisdom keepers and carriers, and I just do my best to stay really humble in my understanding and know that to some of these traditions, I'm still an outsider. And so I just want to acknowledge that, yeah, what I'm sharing and what I'm sharing with you is just, yeah, what I've learned from other teachers and other elders. And I want to give a lot of reverence and thanks to my teacher, Star Lily Sister Nova Birch, for initiating me into womb care. One of the abuelas that I know, Abuelita Chiguasochi, my sister Liz from Getting to the Root. I want to acknowledge Brittany Jade from the Original Instruction School for really carrying so much beautiful knowledge from the jungle and from her heritage as well. And there's so many, many others. My sister Larissa, who's she does danza in the Azteca tradition. My sister Metzli, like there's just so many people that have poured into me great knowledge and have kind of built this like continuity for the way that I understand the sacred earth medicine. So when it comes to postpartum mothers and even mothers close to birthing, I'm very aware of peyote, mescaline containing cactus, the thornless the thornless cactus as a mother's medicine. It's a very joyful medicine, a very sweet medicine, and there are many origin stories of peyote. Hikuri is what some people call it in the Wirarika community, but that medicine, as I've come to know it in its origin story, was kind of uncovered by a postpartum mother and
Mm.
assisted her in continuing on a long voyage. And she's the one who carried it to her people. It saved her life in the desert. And
Wow.
I think that's just a beautiful and gives us a good understanding too, because I think even among in this language that we use, oh, indigenous communities, like there's just one or something, and or that it's like like an just like this uniform blanket of all these people, but it's like there's just so much nuance and diversity and
Yeah.
languages and customs and ways of dress and worldviews, and it's just so important to recognize like it's not all agreeing in the same ways. And so
Hmm.
peyote as I know it, hikuri comes from Mexico, comes from Mexico, and has been part of a women's way of life and part
Mm.
of a mother's way of life for a long time. And not every culture sees women as carriers of this medicine, and not every indigenous culture sees women as carriers of medicine, period. And so
Hmm.
I just want to acknowledge that. In my view and in my perspective, women do have and mothers do have a birthright and do have the like responsibility to also carry medicine. And I just want to acknowledge the medicine women in the world that may we remember that, and that we are like valuable and have enough dignity, and that should be respected enough to be seen as medicine carriers in our communities. So or at least a big part of the way that medicine gets carried. So, yeah, mescaline, peyote is seen as a medicine that can fortify and nutrify the placenta and also help to encourage breast milk production, which is really incredible and
Mm.
beautiful. And so, the specific traditions and the specific ceremonies that take place to sit with peyote vary right
Hmm.
across tribes, and what I want to share though is what's really specific to so many gatherings and so many indigenous people and the way that they sit with these medicine is that they're usually done in groups. That's like almost like it's so shared across so many different cultures, it would like make you consider how being in that kind of setting is part of the way of ensuring the benefit of medicine.
Mm.
So it's very rare that practitioners operate alone, and this is actually really unique to the West. Is that
Mm.
like there's one main character, like leader, facilitator, guide person, and like everyone kind of is like centering that being, and that being has the healing for everyone. It's
Hmm.
very rare, and it's like very not common in this way. Usually it's done with like multiple generations of people present and like children present, and also like um, the responsibilities of the caretaking of the space are shared among
Yeah.
community members, and everyone has some kind of participation within it, even the very young children. So, peyote is usually done in groups and is a very important part of like the healing rituals and can involve and like hold all people.
Yeah.
And that is kind of the framework in which I sat in, was that, as a pregnant person, as a postpartum person, as a breastfeeding mom, I was just welcome to be in these spaces. And
Mm.
that is the kind of feeling mothers deserve to have, is like
Mm.
you belong in community, that there
Mm.
isn't this like, now you're shunned forever because you just had a kid. Like, no, you're welcome, and so is the baby. And
Yeah.
that's an important
Mm.
part of these traditions and cultures. And in Mexica traditions, we have in the Mexica traditions a very comprehensive level of care around the womb. The womb, the matriz, is like, you know, it's such an important part of the general well-being of any human person. And paying attention to the life cycle of the womb, paying attention to the phases of the womb and caretaking it through the ways is like the responsibility and the role of these traditional midwives in this culture. And so at every phase there is celebration. At every phase there is the acknowledgement that this changing woman is changing and that each one deserves celebration and care. And so a lot of us are aware that menarche is a thing, and that the celebration of the first blood is like an important step for all birthing people. And so there is that. And sometimes um, it is possible, and in some traditions even younger than this, that even children ingest psilocybin or peyote or
Hmm.
ayahuasca, or have like their own what's called like an abuela dos, or like an amount that feels appropriate for that
Hmm.
age, so that they can begin familiarizing themselves with like not just the sensation, because I think we're all really concerned about and want to like, wow, are they hallucinating, are they having these full trips and freaking out and whatever. um that not only are they getting in ways familiar with the sensation, but these children are now participating in the framework of community healing, so
Yeah.
that they know like what they should be expecting as an adult, what they will be seeing as they move deeper into their role in their community. So it's also like a way of including children into like the fabric of the psychedelic community that is their home, that is their family, that is their tribe, that is their culture. So like moving through that first blood and into the motherhood portal is like very important to acknowledge that as a rite of passage. And at all different phases of the trimesters, I feel like medicine feels very different, and everyone feels very different at different trimesters. And some people choose to dose during their pregnancies and not. But what I will say is that pregnancy is in itself a mind altering experience, and a
Hmm.
psychedelic experience, and an altered state of consciousness. And um, so is the birth scene. So when we honor mothers as they transition from, a maiden to a mother, we often do that before the birth. And our culture does that by doing a baby shower, which is the giving of gifts, right? But what we also want to do for mothers is prepare them, hear their wishes,
Yeah.
um, you know, tend to them, and acknowledge that they will be going into an action that is more than just a physical one, that is quite psychosomatic, quite spiritual, quite a reach into another plane to like bring in a soul. And not only is the birth that experience, but also conception is too. And so I just want to also give a shout out to conception as an
Hmm.
important part of our relationship with the divine as mothers, because there's also an incredible opening that happens at that point in that moment, that so many of my sisters that teach me Mayan cosmology, also the Aztecas as well, is like conception and intimacy is also a really important point of the way that we engage with our consciousness, and like the way that um, we engage with the divine. And sex and pleasure are important parts of calling in a soul, and
Hmm.
understanding our cervical intelligence, and understanding the nature of our cycles, and the nature of when it is time to plant a seed, or when it is time to let go of a seed.
Yeah.
That is also like a very beautiful relationship that birthing people and bleeding people and cycling people get to have. And we also want to acknowledge all of those tiny initiations of, not all births not all pregnancies result in live birth.
Yeah.
And so I want to acknowledge like the stillborn and the miscarriages.
Well, that was fun. Thanks for tuning in, lovers. And if you want to experience more ecstasy and sexual liberation, head over to sexlovepsychedelics.com and learn about how you can join me for any one of my online or live events. And while you're there, grab my free guide on sex and psychedelics. Remember, this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Please contact your healthcare provider and local law before pursuing any of the products or psychedelics discussed. And one final note here. I make this show specifically for you. If you're loving the show, then be sure to leave me a review in iTunes or Spotify to let me know. Happy to be here and happy to serve. I'll see you next time on Sex, Love, Psychedelics.